The artificial breeze whispered through the genetically modified crops. A calculated gust programmed to disperse pollen at precisely the right intervals. Beneath the towering dome of Ryanthia 17, the illusion of natural weather patterns maintained the delicate ecosystem within this sprawling agricultural outpost. The segmented compartments, each controlled to the nearest decimal of temperature and humidity, stretched for kilometers under the metallic sky. Kale adjusted his air filter mask, the only protection needed against the artificially optimized atmosphere, and ran a gloved hand through his cropped, dark hair. At 32, he had already spent 7 years as an ecological inspector, enforcing the strict genetic preservation codes that maintained humanity's iron grip on its countless colony worlds. He believed in his work with unflinching certainty. Controlled species management was the only way to prevent ecological disasters across post-Terra colonies. His wrist scanner beeped, the biotracking system detecting a minor anomaly in Sector 7. Probably just another modified crop strain, showing unexpected mutations. The Post-Terra Council had been pushing the boundaries of genetic adaptation lately, trying to optimize yields for the expanding human territories. As he moved through the sterile corridors connecting the agricultural domes, he mentally rehearsed the standard protocol for genetic anomalies: identify, document, contain, and if necessary, eradicate. The distant future had not been kind to non-human species. As humanity expanded into neighboring star systems, they brought with them the harsh lessons of Earth's ecological collapse. Control or perish became the mantra, with alien species strictly monitored, tagged, and regulated. Each non-human entity was required to carry a gen tag, a subcutaneous chip that tracked their movements, monitored reproductive capabilities, and ensured compliance with population management directives. The system was ruthlessly efficient, designed to prevent any species from threatening human dominance. Kale had never questioned these methods. In fact, he had helped design portions of the GenTag monitoring systems during his earlier career as a researcher. The necessity of these measures seemed self-evident to him. Without strict genetic control, colony worlds would face the same catastrophic imbalances that had nearly destroyed Earth centuries ago. The anomaly signal grew stronger as he approached the edge of Sector 7, where experimental crop variants were being tested. The rigid rows of blue-tinged wheat swayed in perfect unison, except for a disturbance near the western edge. Something had disrupted the precisely arranged plants, creating a zigzagging path through the field. Kale frowned behind his mask. His scanner indicated no scheduled maintenance in this area, and the movement pattern seemed erratic, not the methodical progress of an agricultural drone. He quickened his pace, following the digital trail displayed on his wrist device. Whatever had caused this disturbance was heading toward the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the agricultural domes. Security Protocol 47 Alpha. He spoke into his communicator. Possible undocumented organism in Sector 7, moving west toward Maintenance Access Point 12. Initiating containment procedure. The response came immediately. Acknowledged, Inspector. Deploying perimeter drones to your location. Proceed with caution. Kale drew his stun baton, its tip crackling with a controlled electric charge. As he approached the edge of the field, his trained eye caught a flash of movement, something ducking into the shadows of the access tunnel. He switched his visor to thermal detection mode, and immediately registered a heat signature, unlike anything native to the station. Whatever he was tracking was definitely alive, and definitely unauthorized. The maintenance tunnel was dimly lit, designed for utility rather than comfort. The concrete walls were lined with pipes and conduits, carrying water, nutrients, and data throughout the vast agricultural complex. Kale moved silently, his boots making barely a sound on the metal grating of the floor. The heat signature was moving ahead of him, seemingly aware of his pursuit. "Stop immediately," he called out, his voice echoing in the confined space. "By authority of the Post-Terra Council, You are required to submit to inspection and identification. The figure ahead paused momentarily, then redoubled its pace, scrambling through the tunnel with desperate intensity. Kyle broke into a run, his training taking over. The chase led deeper into the substructure of the station, through narrower passages, rarely accessed by human personnel. The automated systems here hummed with quiet efficiency, maintaining the life support systems for the agricultural domes above. Finally, the passage ended in a small junction chamber. The figure had nowhere left to run, cornered between massive water filtration tanks. In the improved lighting of the chamber, Kale could finally see what, or rather who, he had been chasing. A female humanoid crouched before him, her blue-tinted skin glistening with perspiration, her violet eyes wide with terror. She wore tattered garments that might once have been a standard-issue uniform, now modified and repurposed. Her hands were raised defensively, trembling slightly. Most notably, her neck was bare of the distinctive implant scar that all registered non-humans were required to display. She had no gen tag. An undocumented alien, the most serious genetic security breach possible. Kyle approached cautiously, stun baton raised. "Identify yourself," he commanded. "Species, designation, and assigned function." The woman's eyes darted around, seeking any possible escape, but finding none. Her breathing was rapid, panicked. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse, as if unused to forming words. "Please," she whispered, the standard human language awkward on her tongue. "Have mercy. Please. I'll bear you strong children." The words struck Kale like a physical blow. It was a phrase he had heard before, the standard plea taught to breeding specimens in the genetic preservation facilities. A memorized script designed to appeal to human handlers when all other options were exhausted. The realization of what she must be, where she must have come from, sent an unexpected chill through him. Kale hesitated, his training urging him to immediately report and contain this genetic security breach. The protocol was clear. Undocumented specimens represented a potential contamination risk and required immediate processing. He should call for a transport team, have her sedated, and delivered to the nearest genetic management facility. But something in her eyes, the raw desperation, the intelligence behind the fear, made him pause. For the first time in his career, Kale found himself questioning the automatic response his training demanded. His communicator crackled. "Inspector, perimeter drones have secured the area. Status report requested." Kale made a split-second decision that would irrevocably alter both their lives. "False alarm," he replied, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. Thermal signature was from a malfunctioning heat exchange unit. "I'm conducting repairs now. Stand down the security protocol." "Acknowledged, Inspector. Drones returning to standard patrol routes." The alien woman remained frozen in place, her eyes fixed on Kale, uncomprehending why he had not immediately called for her capture. He lowered his stun baton slowly, then deactivated it entirely. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice quieter now, less authoritative. She blinked rapidly, confusion replacing some of the fear. Elira," she managed. "Ithana Lyra Vorin." "Vorina," Kale murmured, recognizing the species designation. "I thought your kind were all—" He trailed off, unwilling to complete the sentence. "Processed," Elira supplied, a bitter edge to her voice. "Many were, not all." Kale glanced at his communicator, then at the security cameras that monitored the junction. With practiced movements, he accessed the local network through his inspector's override codes and looped the camera feed, creating a temporary blind spot in the station's surveillance. "I can't leave you here," he said, thinking rapidly. "But I can't turn you in either. Not yet. I need to understand what's happening." Elira's posture remained defensive, untrusting. "Why would you help?" It was a question Kale couldn't fully answer. even to himself. "Because something doesn't add up," he said finally. "And because that plea script they taught you, it shouldn't exist. Not anymore." He made another decision, one that violated every protocol he had sworn to uphold. "There's a secure storage area in the lower levels, off the main security grid. I can take you there, temporarily, until I figure this out." Elira hesitated, clearly weighing her limited options. Finally, she nodded, a barely perceptible movement. "Stay close," Kale instructed. "And if we encounter anyone, let me do the talking." He led her through the maintenance tunnels, carefully avoiding the main corridors and security checkpoints. His inspector's credentials allowed them to bypass most automated systems, and his intimate knowledge of the station's layout helped them avoid human contact. They descended through rarely used access shafts, into the depths of the agricultural station, where the oldest storage facilities lay partially forgotten. Ryanthia 17, like most post-Terra outposts, had been built in layers, with newer systems and facilities constructed over the old. The lower levels were now used primarily for archival storage and backup systems, seldom visited and minimally monitored. Kale led Elira to a small storage room that had once housed environmental sampling equipment, now obsolete and replaced. The room was spare and utilitarian: metal walls, a single cot used for overnight monitoring shifts, basic sanitation facilities, and a small terminal connected to the station's information network. Most importantly, it lay in a surveillance blind spot, one of the few areas not constantly monitored by the station's security systems. "You'll be safe here, for now," Kale said, securing the door behind them. "The room isn't on the current security grid, and my credentials will keep anyone from accessing it without authorization." Elira stood in the center of the room, her posture still tense, ready for flight or fight. Her eyes scanned every detail of the space, assessing it with the wariness of someone long accustomed to danger. "Why?" she asked again, more insistently this time. "Why risk yourself for me?" Kale removed his filter mask, revealing his face fully for the first time. He was younger looking than his years, with sharp, observant eyes and the perpetual slight frown of someone accustomed to scrutinizing details. "Because what you said earlier, that plea, it's from a program that was officially discontinued years ago," he explained. "The breeding script was deemed psychologically damaging and counterproductive. It was replaced with more humane protocols." "Humane," Elira repeated, the word clearly bitter on her tongue. "There is nothing humane about what they do in those facilities." Kale accessed the terminal, pulling up his official credentials and creating a false documentation trail. "I'm registering you as a sample specimen, preserved for genetic study," he explained. "It will keep you off the main detection systems, at least temporarily." As he worked, he asked, "How did you escape the genetic facility? And how long have you been hiding here?" Elira lowered herself cautiously onto the edge of the cot. 3 cycles, she said, using the standard time measurement of the post-Terra calendar. "I was being transferred from the main facility to a specialized breeding center. There was an accident during transport. The guards were killed. I survived." She rubbed absently at her neck, where a gen tag would normally be implanted. "I removed the tag myself. It was painful, but necessary." Kale winced involuntarily at the thought. Gen tags were designed to be permanent, integrated with the nervous system to prevent exactly this kind of removal. The pain must have been excruciating. "I've been moving between stations since then," she continued, "staying hidden, taking only what I needed to survive. I thought this agricultural outpost would be safer, less heavily monitored than the residential stations." "It usually is," Kyle agreed. "But you triggered a genetic anomaly alert. The crops here are sensitive to non-registered biological signatures." He finished his work at the terminal, creating a convincing cover story that would buy them time. According to the official record, Illyra was now designated as Specimen V17, a genetic sample being preserved for scientific study under Inspector Kale's authority. "You need food," he realized, noting her gaunt appearance. "And proper medical attention." "I can manage," she said stiffly, pride evident despite her desperate situation. "No," Kale insisted. "If you're going to remain undetected, you need to be healthy. Weakness leads to mistakes, and mistakes will get you caught." He accessed the room's small synthesizer unit, a standard feature in most station facilities, and programmed it to produce a balanced meal suitable for Verena physiology. The machine hummed softly, assembling proteins, carbohydrates, and nutrients into a simple but nourishing meal. "Eat," he said, placing the tray before her. "I need to return to my duties before my absence is noticed. I'll secure this room with my personal code. No one else will be able to enter." Illyra stared at the food, then back at Kale, suspicion still evident in her violet eyes. "And then what? What happens after today?" It was a question Kale wasn't ready to answer. His actions had already placed his career, possibly his freedom, in jeopardy. Every moment he spent helping this unauthorized alien dug him deeper into a hole from which he might never emerge. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'll return tonight. We'll figure it out then." He reactivated his filter mask, reassuming the persona of the dutiful inspector. At the door, he paused, looking back at the blue-skinned woman perched uncertainly on the edge of the cot. "Illyra," he said, testing her name. "Don't try to leave this room, for both our sakes." She nodded. A silent agreement. Kale sealed the door behind him, his mind racing with the implications of what he had just done. For the first time in his career, he had directly violated the genetic security protocols he was sworn to uphold, and he still didn't fully understand why. Throughout the remainder of his shift, Kale maintained a facade of normalcy, conducting his routine inspections with his usual thoroughness. But his thoughts repeatedly returned to the alien woman hidden in the depths of the station, and to the troubling questions her presence raised. The breeding plea script that Illyra had recited was indeed part of an abandoned protocol, one that Kale himself had helped to phase out during his time as a policy researcher. The fact that she knew it suggested she had been in the system longer than should have been possible for an unprocessed specimen. Moreover, her species, Verena, had been officially classified as genetically integrated years ago, a euphemism for complete absorption into the managed breeding program. Yet here she was, an impossibility in a system designed to eliminate anomalies. As promised, Kyle returned to the hidden room that evening, bringing additional supplies, clothing, medical equipment, and more substantial food. He found Illyra sitting exactly where he had left her, though the food tray was empty. "You came back," she observed, a note of surprise in her voice. "I said I would," Kale replied, setting down his supplies. "How are you feeling?" "Stronger," she admitted. "The food helped. It's been difficult to find proper nutrition while hiding." Kale nodded, unpacking the medical scanner he had brought. "I need to check you for tracking implants or hidden tags. The primary gen tag isn't the only way they monitor valuable specimens." Illyra tensed visibly at the word specimens, but nodded her consent. Kale activated the scanner, running it carefully over her body without touching her. The device hummed softly, analyzing her biological signature for any electronic or chemical markers. "You're clear," he announced finally. "No secondary tracking devices. That's unusual, especially for a Verena." "What do you know of my people?" Illyra asked, her voice suddenly sharper. Kale set the scanner aside. "Only what's in the official records. The Verena were classified as a high-priority genetic resource due to your adaptive physiological capabilities. Your planet was appropriated for terraforming approximately 12 Earth years ago, and the surviving population was integrated into the genetic preservation program. Appropriated, Elira echoed bitterly. Our world was invaded, our resistance crushed, and our people enslaved for our genetic material. That is the truth behind your sterile terminology. I'm sorry, Kale said, the words feeling wholly inadequate. I was a researcher then, helping design preservation protocols. I believed we were saving important genetic diversity. By forcing us to breed, Elira's violet eyes flashed with anger. By teaching us to beg for mercy, to offer our reproductive capabilities like currency? That plea you heard, it wasn't just words they taught us. It was the only option left to those who resisted the breeding program. Kale sat heavily on the room's single chair, the weight of this revelation pressing down on him. I didn't know, he said quietly. The reports claimed all integration was voluntary, that your people understood the necessity. There was nothing voluntary about it, Elira said. We fought until we couldn't fight anymore. Then they separated us, tagged us, and taught us how to be obedient genetic resources. She pulled something from a hidden pocket in her tattered clothing, 3 slender bands of an iridescent material that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. These are all I have left of my world. Pledge bands, meant to be exchanged during our bonding ceremonies. I kept them hidden, even in the breeding facilities, a reminder of what was taken from us. Kale stared at the bands, their beauty incongruous in the stark utilitarian room. How did you survive the integration? How are you here, unprocessed, when the official records claim your entire species is accounted for? Elira carefully returned the bands to their hiding place. Not all records tell the truth, Inspector. Some of us were kept off the official registry, special projects. They called us experimental subjects for genetic modifications too risky for valuable specimens. We were the expendable ones. The implication chilled Kale to the bone. His work had always been founded on the belief that the genetic preservation program, while strict, was at least humane and transparent. The idea that there might be hidden facilities, unregistered subjects, experimental procedures conducted without oversight. It undermined everything he had believed about the system he served. I need to know more, he said finally. Everything you can tell me about these facilities, these experiments. If what you're saying is true, it violates the most fundamental principles of the preservation directives. Why should I trust you with this information? Elira challenged. You are part of the system that imprisoned my people. Because I'm the only ally you have right now, Kale replied simply. And because if what you're saying is true, then I've been complicit in something I cannot accept. Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp beep from Kale's communicator. He checked it quickly, his expression darkening. What is it? Elira asked, tensing immediately. A notification from my supervisor, Dr. Soren Vale, Kyle explained. He's questioning the specimen designation I created for you. Says it doesn't match any known genetic study protocols. What does that mean? It means we have less time than I thought, Kale said grimly. He'll want to inspect the specimen personally. That's standard procedure when anomalies appear in the registry. Then I need to leave, Elira said, rising to her feet. Now, before they find me. No, Kale countered. Running now would only trigger security protocols. You wouldn't make it out of the station. He paced the small room, thinking rapidly. We need a better plan. A way to buy more time. He returned to the terminal, fingers flying over the interface. I'm going to alter your designation. Link it to an actual ongoing study. Something in a secure facility that Vale won't have immediate access to. As he worked, Kyle continued to question Elira, piecing together a disturbing picture of the reality behind the genetic preservation program. According to her account, beneath the official protocols lay a darker system, one where genetically valuable specimens were indeed preserved for their genetic material. But where others were used for experimentation, their existence unrecorded, their suffering unacknowledged. There, Kale said finally, completing his alterations to the system. I've designated you as part of a priority study from Central Research. It should discourage immediate inspection, but it won't hold forever. He turned to face Alira. His decision made, I'm going to help you escape this station, not just hide you, get you out completely. Alira's expression revealed her disbelief. Why would you risk that for me? You don't even know if what I'm telling you is true. I know enough, Kale replied. I've seen the inconsistencies in the system for years. Specimens that disappear from the registry, facilities with security clearances beyond my access despite my position. I told myself there must be legitimate reasons. But what you've described, it fits the pattern. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation from the normally composed inspector. Besides, even if the system were as humane as I was led to believe, your existence, a free Vorina, represents something important, a choice that was denied to your people. Freedom isn't just about physical escape, Alira said quietly. My people are gone. Our world is gone. Where would I go, even if I could leave the station? I don't know, Kyle admitted. But having the choice matters. And if what you've told me about these hidden facilities is true, then exposing them matters even more. He checked the time on his communicator. I need to respond to Vale's inquiry before he escalates it. Stay here, rest. I'll return when I can with a more detailed plan. Kale exited the hidden room, carefully sealing it behind him. As he made his way back to the upper levels of the station, his mind worked furiously, analyzing options, calculating risks. What he was contemplating, helping an unregistered alien escape, potentially exposing classified aspects of the genetic program, wasn't just career suicide. It was treason against the Post-Terra Council itself. Yet he couldn't unsee what had been revealed. The breeding plea script that had haunted him since Alira first uttered it. The pledge bands she kept as her only connection to a lost world. The experiments she described, conducted in shadows beyond official oversight. If the system he had devoted his life to was built on such foundations, what did that make him? Over the next several days, Kale established a careful routine. He performed his inspector duties with his usual efficiency, deflecting Dr. Vale's questions about the unusual specimen designation with technical jargon and bureaucratic misdirection. In his off hours, he visited Alira, bringing supplies and information, gradually piecing together a viable escape plan. The station receives regular shipments of genetic material, he explained during one such visit, displaying a schematic on his personal device. Outgoing transports are less closely monitored than incoming ones. I've identified a research vessel scheduled to depart in 6 days, the Orion's Whisper. It's headed to an outpost in the Aranthus system, a relatively undeveloped region. How would we get aboard without being detected? Alira asked, studying the schematic. I'll create a transfer order, listing you as a genetic sample being sent for specialized analysis. Kale replied, I can forge the necessary authorizations. The transport containers are environment-controlled, designed to maintain viability for biological specimens. Uncomfortable, but survivable for the journey. And once we arrive at this outpost? Kale hesitated. That's where it gets complicated. I'll need to be on the same transport, which means abandoning my post here, effectively ending my career. Once we reach Aranthus, we'll need to find a way to leave the outpost entirely. Find somewhere in the undeveloped regions where we can disappear. We, Alira repeated, surprise evident in her voice. You're planning to come with me? I have to, Kale said simply. Once I help you escape, I become a fugitive too, and you'll need help navigating post-Terra systems to stay free. Alira was silent for a long moment, her violet eyes studying him intently. Why are you really doing this, Kale? The truth. The question penetrated the careful professional distance he had maintained. Because I've spent my life believing in a system that promised to preserve and protect genetic diversity with dignity and transparency. If what you've told me is true, and everything I've found in the restricted archives suggests it is, then that system is a lie, and I've been enforcing that lie. He met her gaze steadily. I need to make that right, not just for you, but for myself. Something shifted in Illyra's expression, a softening, a tentative trust. 6 days, she said finally. What do we need to do to prepare? Their planning was meticulous. Kale gradually gathered the supplies they would need. Emergency rations, medical kits, portable communication devices scrubbed of tracking software. He created the false transfer orders, timing them to coincide with a regular genetic material shipment to minimize scrutiny. Meanwhile, Illyra regained her strength. The regular meals and rest restoring some of the vitality that months of desperate survival had depleted. She shared more about her world, about Vorina culture and history, painting a picture of a civilization now lost, except in her memories. Our people were explorers once, she told Kale, during one of their evening conversations. Before your council claimed our world, we had begun our own journeys to nearby stars, not to conquer or control, but to learn, to understand the diversity of life. What happened? Kale asked, genuinely curious about this history that existed nowhere in the official records. We encountered your scout ships, Illyra said. We welcomed them, shared our knowledge freely. They reported back to your council that our world was ideal for terraforming, and that our people possessed valuable genetic adaptations worth preserving. The invasion fleet arrived a year later. Kale winced. The official history claims the Vorina world was uninhabitable, its atmosphere poisoned by natural disaster. That your people requested evacuation and integration. Illyra laughed bitterly. They poisoned our atmosphere themselves when we resisted, called it accelerated terraforming. Those who survived the initial attacks were rounded up for genetic preservation. The strongest became breeding stock. The rest became experimental subjects. These conversations deepened Kale's resolve. Each revelation about the true nature of the system he had served strengthened his determination to make amends in the only way he could, by helping Illyra escape, by giving at least one Vorina the freedom to choose her own fate. On the 4th day of their preparations, disaster nearly struck. Kale was summoned to Dr. Vale's office, a sterile space dominated by holographic displays of genetic sequences and population management charts. Inspector, Vale greeted him, his tone professionally cordial, but his eyes sharp and assessing. I've been reviewing your recent specimen designations, particularly this Vorina sample you've classified under Central Research Protocols. Kale maintained his composed expression, though his pulse quickened. Yes, Doctor. A rare variant I discovered during routine inspections. Given the genetic significance, I followed protocol for high-priority preservation. Vale's fingers manipulated the holographic display, bringing up Kale's falsified documentation. That's just it, Inspector. I contacted Central Research to inquire about the study parameters. They have no record of authorizing such a collection. The moment Kale had dreaded had arrived. Vale hadn't simply accepted the bureaucratic misdirection. He had actively investigated. Now, Kale faced a choice. Double down on the deception or admit to the irregularity and face the consequences. An oversight on my part, Kyle said smoothly, choosing the former path. I submitted the specimen under emergency preservation protocols, which don't require prior central authorization. The full documentation would have been processed during the next synchronization cycle. Vale leaned back in his chair, studying Kale with clinical detachment. And you didn't think to inform me of this unusual find? A Vorina variant, when their genetic line has been fully documented and integrated for years? With respect, Doctor, My authority as inspector grants me discretion in genetic security matters, Cale countered, a hint of steel entering his voice. The specimen required immediate containment. I prioritize security over procedural notifications. For a long moment, Vale said nothing, his gaze never leaving Cale's face. Then, with deliberate slowness, he closed the holographic display. Very well, Inspector. I'll accept your explanation for now. But I would like to examine this specimen personally. Its genetic significance could be considerable. Cale had anticipated this request and prepared for it. Unfortunately, Doctor, I've already arranged for the specimen's transfer to the specialized containment facilities at the Aranthus outpost. Their equipment is better suited for detailed analysis of potential genetic anomalies. Transfer? Vale's eyebrows rose sharply. Without my authorization? With all due respect, Doctor, Inspector-level genetic security protocols supersede standard research hierarchies when potential containment issues are identified, Cale replied, quoting directly from regulations he had helped write years ago. The transfer order has already been processed through Central Command. The specimen leaves on the Orion's Whisper in 2 days. Vale's expression hardened slightly. You've been remarkably proactive about this specimen, Inspector Cale. One might almost think you have a personal interest in the matter. The implied accusation hung in the air between them. Cale met Vale's gaze steadily, his years of professional detachment serving him well in this moment of crisis. My only interest is in maintaining genetic security and preservation standards, Doctor, as it has always been. After another long moment, Vale nodded curtly. Very well. But I'll be filing a formal notice with Central Command regarding these unusual procedures. For the record. Of course, Doctor. I would expect nothing less. Cale left Vale's office with outward calm, but inwardly, his mind raced. The confrontation had accelerated their timeline. Vale's formal notice would trigger a review, and when that happened, the falsified transfer orders would be discovered. They needed to leave immediately, not in 2 days as planned, but tonight. He returned to the hidden room with urgent steps, finding Elira engaged in what appeared to be a series of controlled physical movements, a kind of meditation or exercise regime from her lost culture. We need to move, he announced without preamble. Vale is suspicious. He's filing a formal review of the transfer orders. We have hours, not days, before the deception is discovered. Elira stopped her movements immediately, transitioning to alert readiness with fluid grace. What's the new plan? The Orion's Whisper is already docked, taking on supplies. Cale explained rapidly. We'll need to board tonight, during the skeleton shift when security is minimized. I can still use my inspector's credentials to access the docking bay. But once we're aboard, we'll need to remain hidden until departure. And if we're discovered? Elira asked, already gathering the few possessions she had accumulated. Then we improvise, Cale replied grimly. But discovery means capture, and capture means... He left the sentence unfinished. They both knew what capture would mean, for Elira, a return to the genetic facilities she had escaped. For Cale, trial and imprisonment for treason against the Post-Terra Council. They waited until the station's night cycle, when most personnel were off duty, and the automated systems took over most monitoring functions. Kyle had timed their movement to coincide with a scheduled maintenance sweep of the security systems, a brief window when the cameras would be processing diagnostic checks rather than actively surveilling. He led Elira through the maintenance tunnels, the same path they had first taken, but now moving upward toward the docking bays rather than downward to the hidden storage room. Each intersection required careful timing, each security checkpoint a calculated risk. Kyle's inspector credentials granted them access, but each use left an electronic trail that would eventually be discovered. They reached the vast docking bay as the maintenance sweep was completing. The cavernous space housed several vessels, from small personnel shuttles to larger transport ships. The Orion's Whisper sat at the far end, a sleek, functional vessel designed for rapid transport of sensitive materials between research outposts. "There," Kyle whispered, pointing to a loading area where automated systems were transferring the last of the cargo containers into the ship's hold. "Those containers are designed for biological specimens. We can use them to get aboard." They moved swiftly through the shadows of the docking bay, avoiding the few human workers supervising the loading process. The cargo containers were cylindrical, approximately 2 meters in length and 1 meter in diameter, large enough for a person to fit inside, though hardly comfortably. Kale accessed the nearest container's control panel, overriding the standard protocols. "These are designed to maintain optimal conditions for biological samples," he explained as he worked. "Oxygen supply, temperature regulation. It won't be pleasant, but it will keep you alive during boarding." "What about you?" Elira asked, eyeing the confined space with apprehension. "I'll use my credentials to board officially, as part of a last-minute inspection," Kale replied. "Once we're underway, I'll locate your container and release you. The ship operates with minimal crew, mostly automated systems. We can hide in the cargo hold until we reach Aranthus." A sudden alarm blared throughout the docking bay, causing both of them to freeze. Red warning lights began to flash along the walls, and the automated announcement system activated. "Attention all personnel. Security alert in progress. Unscheduled inspection of all departing vessels. All loading operations temporarily suspended. Please stand by for further instructions." Kale's blood ran cold. Vale must have acted more quickly than anticipated, escalating his concerns to station security. Now, an unscheduled inspection would discover them before they could even board. "We need another way," Elira said urgently, already scanning their surroundings for alternatives. Kale spotted a maintenance access panel near the Orion's Whisper's docking clamps. "There," he pointed. "External maintenance access. It bypasses the main airlocks." They moved swiftly, keeping to the shadows as security personnel began to enter the docking bay. Kale's inspector credentials allowed him to override the access panel's security locks, revealing a narrow service tunnel that connected directly to the ship's outer hull. "This leads to the environmental control systems," he explained hurriedly. "We can access the cargo hold from there." The tunnel was cramped and dark, designed for maintenance drones rather than human access. They crawled through it in single file, Kyle leading the way with the light from his communicator, providing minimal illumination. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of the security team beginning their inspection of the docking area. After what seemed an eternity of claustrophobic progression, they reached another access panel. Kale worked quickly to bypass its security, and they emerged into a narrow technical corridor within the Orion's Whisper itself. "Environmental control section," Kale whispered, getting his bearings. "The cargo hold should be 1 level down." They navigated through the ship's maintenance corridors, avoiding the main passageways where crew members might be present. The Orion's Whisper was already humming with pre-launch preparations, its systems coming online in sequence as it prepared to depart once the security alert was resolved. Finally, they reached the cargo hold, a large compartment filled with secured containers of various sizes, all carefully documented and tagged for their destinations. Kyle quickly located an area at the back of the hold, partially concealed behind larger containers. "We can hide here during the journey," he said, examining the space. "It's away from the regular cargo access points. The crew rarely enters this area once loading is complete." Elira nodded, already arranging their meager supplies to create a small, concealed nest among the containers. "How long until we reach Aranthus?" 3 days, Kale replied. "Once we're underway, I can access the ship's systems to monitor our progress and any potential complications." A sudden vibration ran through the ship, followed by the distinctive sound of the docking clamps releasing. Kale frowned, checking his communicator. "They're departing early," he realized. "The security alert must have been resolved, and they're clearing vessels to leave immediately to avoid further delays." They secured themselves among the cargo containers as the ship's engines engaged, the subtle shift in gravity indicating their departure from the station. As the Orion's Whisper pulled away from Ryanthea 17, Kale felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. They had managed aboard to escape the immediate threat of discovery, but they were now committed to a path from which there was no return. For the first time in his adult life, Kale was leaving behind the structured system that had defined his existence. He glanced at Alira, her blue-tinged features barely visible in the dimmed lighting of the cargo hold, and wondered if the freedom they sought would be worth the price they would both pay. The journey aboard the Orion's Whisper was tense but uneventful. They remained hidden in their makeshift sanctuary among the cargo containers, emerging only when absolutely necessary. Kyle used his knowledge of ship systems to tap into the vessel's monitoring network, keeping track of crew movements and their progress toward Aranthus. During the long hours of hiding, they talked in hushed voices, sharing more of their respective worlds. Kyle spoke of his childhood on one of the inner colony worlds, his education in genetic security protocols, and his gradual rise through the ranks to become an inspector. Alira shared more about Verena culture, their art, their music, their connection to the natural world that had been so violently severed. "In our tradition," she explained on the second night, holding one of her precious pledge bands in the dim light. These were exchanged during bonding ceremonies, not just between mates, but also between close allies, those who swore to protect one another. The materials come from our world's sacred forests, living metal, we called it, because it would warm to the touch of its intended wearer. Kale watched as the band seemed to shimmer with an inner light, responding to Alira's touch. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "I'm sorry that so much of your culture has been lost." "Not lost," Alira corrected, her voice firm despite its quietness. "Not while I remember, not while I live to pass it on." There was something in her tone that caught Kale's attention, a particular emphasis that suggested more than just cultural preservation. Before he could question it, however, the ship's intercom system activated, announcing their approach to the Aranthus outpost. It was time to prepare for arrival. "The cargo will be unloaded automatically," Kale explained, as they gathered their supplies. "We need to find a way to exit the ship without being processed through the outpost's security systems." "And then?" Alira asked. "What is this Aranthus like? Where can we go that the Council won't find us?" "Aranthus is a frontier system," Kale replied. "The outpost is the only established human presence, a research station studying the system's habitable planets for potential colonization. The planets themselves are largely unexplored, with minimal monitoring. If we can reach one of them, we might find a place to disappear." Their opportunity came during the docking procedure. As the Orion's Whisper connected with the Aranthus outpost, Kale accessed the ship's systems one final time, triggering a minor environmental alert in a section far from the cargo hold. The distraction drew the small crew away, allowing them to slip from their hiding place and access an external maintenance hatch. The Aranthus outpost was smaller than Ryanthea 17, a preliminary research station, rather than a full agricultural complex. Its security was less comprehensive. Its personnel focused on scientific exploration rather than genetic containment. Using the confusion of the docking procedures as cover, Kale and Alira made their way to the outpost's shuttle bay, where vessels used for planetary exploration were maintained. "These shuttles are designed for automated survey missions," Kyle explained, as they approached a small, utilitarian craft. "They can be programmed for simple landing operations without direct pilot control." He accessed the shuttle's systems, using his inspector's override codes one final time. "I'm setting a course for Aranthus 3rd, the most hospitable of the system's planets, according to the survey data. Moderate climate, breathable atmosphere, minimal dangerous wildlife." The shuttle's systems came online, its pre-launch diagnostics running automatically. On a nearby console, An alert suddenly flashed. Incoming communication from Central Command. Kyle glanced at it grimly. "They've discovered our escape," he said. "The alert will reach the outpost's security within minutes." They boarded the shuttle hurriedly, Kale finalizing the launch sequence before sealing the hatch behind them. The small vessel detached from its docking clamps, thrusters engaging to carry them away from the outpost and toward the waiting planet below. Through the shuttle's viewport, they watched as the outpost grew smaller, a man-made star against the backdrop of space. Ahead of them, Iranthus III grew larger, a world of blues and greens reminiscent of ancient Earth, largely untouched by human interference. "We'll need to abandon the shuttle after landing," Kyle said, as they entered the planet's atmosphere. "It will have tracking systems that the outpost can follow." Elira nodded, her eyes fixed on the approaching landscape, rolling hills covered in vegetation unlike anything on her homeworld, yet beautiful in its alien way. "How far will we need to go?" "Far enough to be beyond their immediate search radius," Kale replied. "The outpost's resources are limited. They won't be able to mount an extensive ground search, not for two fugitives deemed non-critical." The shuttle's automated systems guided it to a gentle landing in a small clearing among what appeared to be forest-like growth. The vegetation was predominantly blue-green, with occasional bursts of vibrant purple from flowering structures. A small stream cut through the clearing, its water clear and reflecting the light of Iranthus's sun. They gathered their supplies quickly, Kale disabling as many of the shuttle's tracking systems as he could before they departed. They headed away from the landing site, following the stream deeper into the forest. The gravity was slightly lighter than standard, giving their steps a subtle buoyancy that helped them cover ground quickly despite the unfamiliar terrain. By nightfall, they had traveled several kilometers from the shuttle, following the stream to where it widened into a small lake. The shore provided a defensible position with good visibility, and the fresh water would be essential for survival. They made camp beneath the spreading branches of a tree-like growth, its broad leaves providing shelter from the light rain that had begun to fall. As Kale worked to establish a temporary shelter, Elira stood at the edge of the lake, her face tilted up to feel the rain against her skin. In the fading light, her blue complexion seemed to blend with the alien landscape, as if she belonged here in a way she never had on the human stations. "It's beautiful," she said when Kale joined her. "Different from Verena, but alive, free." "Yes," Kyle agreed, looking around at their new surroundings. For the first time since their escape began, he allowed himself to truly feel what they had accomplished and what they had left behind. His career, his position, his entire life within the system, all sacrificed for this moment, this freedom. "What now?" Elira asked, turning to face him. "How do we survive here?" "One day at a time," Kale replied. The survey data indicated edible vegetation, clean water. "We have supplies to last us until we can establish something more permanent. We'll need shelter, sustainable food sources." He trailed off, realizing he was falling back into his methodical planning, his need for systems and structure. Elira seemed to sense this, a small smile touching her lips. "First," she said gently, "we rest. We've earned that much." They returned to the shelter Kale had constructed, a simple but effective arrangement of branches and the emergency materials they had brought from the station. As night fell completely, the forest around them came alive with soft bioluminescence, plants and small creatures giving off a gentle blue-green glow that bathed everything in ethereal light. They sat side by side at the entrance to their shelter, watching this natural light show in comfortable silence. The immediate danger had passed. They had escaped the stations, the genetic facilities, the controlling reach of the post-Terra Council. What lay ahead was uncertain, but for this moment, uncertainty felt like freedom. "Kyle," Elira said finally, her voice soft in the glowing darkness. "There's something I haven't told you. Something important." He turned to look at her, noting how the bioluminescent light played across her features, highlighting the delicate patterns on her blue skin. "What is it?" Elira placed a hand on her abdomen, a gesture both protective and proud. "I'm carrying life. 6 cycles now. A child of Verena." The revelation struck Kale with unexpected force. "How? I thought in the facilities." "The experimental procedures," Elira explained. "They were attempting to enhance our reproductive capabilities, to create Verena, who could breed more efficiently, produce more offspring for their genetic harvesting. In some of us, it worked too well. I became pregnant despite their control measures. That's when I knew I had to escape, before they discovered it and took my child for their experiments." Kale was silent for a long moment, absorbing this new information. A child, a free Vorina child, born outside the control of the genetic facilities. The implications were profound. "That's why you said our culture isn't lost," he realized. "Because it will live on in your child." Elira nodded, her hand still resting protectively over her abdomen. "A new generation, born in freedom. The first in 12 years. Without conscious thought, Kale reached out, his hand covering hers. "We'll protect this child," he promised. "Build a life here, where it can grow up knowing its heritage, its culture, free from gen tags and breeding facilities, and everything the Council represents." Elira's other hand moved to her hidden pocket, withdrawing one of the 3 pledge bands she had preserved from her world. "In my culture," she said, holding it between them, "when one person saves another's life, they become connected, responsible for one another. This band symbolizes that bond." She held it out to him, the living metal catching the bioluminescent light. "Will you accept this bond, Kale? Will you help me protect this new life, this future for my people?" Kale looked at the offered band, then at Elira's face. No longer the desperate fugitive he had captured in the maintenance tunnel, but a strong, determined woman fighting for her child's future. In that moment, he felt something shift within him, the last vestiges of his old life, his old beliefs, falling away. "I will," he said, accepting the band. As it touched his skin, he felt a subtle warmth, as if the metal itself were recognizing his pledge. He slipped it onto his wrist, where it adjusted itself to fit perfectly. Elira smiled, a genuine expression of joy that transformed her features. "Then we are bound, by the traditions of Verena. Whatever comes, we face it together." In the days and weeks that followed, they established a more permanent settlement by the lake. Kyle's practical knowledge combined with Elira's natural adaptability to create a functional living space. A sturdy shelter built from local materials, systems for collecting and purifying water, methods for identifying and preserving edible vegetation. They ventured further from their initial landing site, mapping the surrounding area and finding natural resources they could use. The planet proved generous. The lake contained fish-like creatures that provided protein. The forest offered fruits and nutritious roots, and the mild climate required minimal protection from the elements. As they worked together to build their new life, the relationship between them evolved. The initial alliance of necessity deepened into genuine connection, trust, and eventually, something more. Kyle found himself drawn to Elira's resilience, her wisdom, her capacity for joy despite all she had endured. She, in turn, came to value his dedication, his meticulous care, his willingness to abandon everything he had known to do what was right. 3 months after their arrival on Aranthus III, as they sat together, watching the sunrise over the lake, Elira took Kale's hand in hers. In her other hand, she held another of her precious pledge bands. "In Vorina tradition," she said, "there is another kind of bond between those who choose to build a life together, to share joy and sorrow, to create family." She offered him the band. "If you wish it." Cale looked at her, at the woman who had changed his entire understanding of the universe, who had shown him the courage to break free from a system he now recognized as deeply flawed. Her pregnancy was more visible now, her abdomen gently rounded with the new life growing within. "I wish it," he said simply, accepting the second band and placing it beside the first on his wrist. Then, hesitantly, he reached out to touch her abdomen, feeling for the first time the subtle movement of the child within. "Both of you." Illyra placed her hand over his, guiding it to where the movement was strongest. "The child knows your voice already," she said softly. "Knows you will protect us." "Always," Cale promised. And for the first time since he could remember, he smiled without reservation, without the weight of regulations and protocols and systems. A genuine smile, born of freedom and hope and the promise of a future he had never imagined possible. As the sun rose higher, bathing their home in golden light, they stood together at the edge of the lake, hands intertwined, the pledge bands gleaming like promises on their wrists. Behind them lay the shelter they had built together, and beyond that, the vast unexplored wilderness of Aranthus III, a world of possibilities, of new beginnings. Before them lay a future uncertain but filled with potential, a child who would grow up knowing both Varina heritage and human compassion, a new life unburdened by gen tags and breeding facilities, free to choose its own path. It was enough, more than enough. "Home," Illyra said, the word filled with wonder and contentment. "Home," Kyle agreed, and in that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that all they had risked, all they had sacrificed, had been worth it. For this freedom, for this future, for the chance to build something new from the ashes of what had been lost. Together, they turned away from the lake and walked hand in hand toward their shelter, toward the life they were creating, one day at a time, on this distant world where freedom had finally been found.